Hello, and welcome to Trading Without Fear. Hi, so welcome to Trading Without Fear. I'm here with a very special guest, Jason E from Trading Ascension podcast. Jason is an NLP practitioner, coach, life coach, and a trader, and he's documenting his journey on YouTube, also under the name of Trading Ascension. So, do you have anything to add to that, Jason?
No, just excited to be here. That's me.
Yeah. So in today's episode, we're going to be going over a little bit of some trading errors, some common trader errors, and how to actually overcome those. Jason has some really good tips on how to overcome some of the trading habits. So we're going to kind of dive into those. So you're a trader yourself, aren't you, Jason?
Correct. Yeah, I trade. I guess what you would call a scalper. I started out in ZB doing treasury bonds, but now I'm solely in the S&P 500.
Okay. So the S&P 500, is that the only markets you trade in then?
That's correct. Yeah, just the ES.
Okay. Would that be the E-minis? Is that what they're called?
Yeah, it's the
Yeah.
minis.
Yeah. Okay. And so how long have you been trading for?
So let's see. I'm right about 2 years and about 5 months.
2 years and 5 months. So
Yeah,
are
so
you a
rarely
self-taught
new.
trader, or did you kind of sign up for a mentor or something like that, or you were somebody that kind of helped you along your way?
Yeah, so a little bit of all. I found trading with a friend who was in Chicago. He does real estate, and he just reached out like, "Hey, I'm doing this thing on the side of selling homes. It's really awesome." I had some time on my hand at that time. This is, I believe early 2020, late 2019, and he showed it to me, and I was blown away. I was like, "Man, this is awesome!" So I really got into it. I was going to some classes with him. Eventually, they fell off. At that time, I'd already purchased Ninja Trader. I already had some data flowing. So when that fell off, I was like, what can I do and not have to rebuy software? And so I found another course
Mhm.
and started with a guy named Michael Chin. Went through the course there. Once I realized that this was a psychological game more than anything, I immediately started reaching out, trying to find mentors in my local area as well as online. And
Mhm.
that's about the time I started my podcast, really as a way to um, reach out, learn from other people, ask the questions I had without having to pay the mentor,
Yeah.
and then be able to share that information with the world.
Excellent. And so I've seen that you've had Paula T on your podcast. Is
Yeah,
that how you kind of did the same thing by networking, trying to get to different people regarding trading psychology?
yeah, definitely. And so one thing I do is I'm a systems person. So I
Mhm.
said, okay, I'm going to start this podcast. How can I, in the most professional way, get these individuals who are way above me with years of experience, and people like Paula T, who's an awesome person, one of my
Yeah.
favorite guests. I've had her on twice. So I created a system really to bring in guests and individuals who were traders and far along on the path. So I created the system, just reached out. A lot of misses, but I got some great guests on there, like Paula T. So
Yeah.
very
Paula T
fortunate.
is amazing. She's one of the ones that
Yeah.
referred me on to you. So that's how I found you with Paula T.
Oh,
Um,
awesome. Yeah.
So, do
Yeah.
you
Just the
trade with
trading
your
one.
own money, or do you trade as a prop firm or anything like that, or like one of
Y-
those?
Yeah. So prop firm. So back to the
Okay.
certificate. That's the prop firm certificate. So I started out with a small account. I realized I wasn't going to reach the goals I had.
Hmm.
And I guess I would, but it would take a lot slower. So I
Yeah.
eventually started going the prop firm route. Um, from the prop firm, ultimately, I'm looking to build up my own second account just to have two of them going. My main account without prop firm money is pretty small at this time, so it's
Hmm.
mainly prop firm. But eventually, I'm going to be filtering it to the prop firm and some other ventures that I'm into. But so right now, a little bit of both, but mainly prop firm trading.
Okay. That answered my question with the certificate. So
Yeah.
you're trading in prop firm. I'm assuming that you have some sort of contact with some mentors within the prop firms. Uh, what are some of the challenges that you had as a trader, or you still have as a trader that you're trying to overcome?
So one of the most recent challenges I've ran into is been with patience.
Hmm.
And once you got and I guess another one I'll mention right after this, but with patience, once I got the prop firm account, I was like, wow, the door's open. I got a lot of market capital, and I got a little impatient with wanting to get things
Yeah.
now. So that caused me to get into trades a little bit earlier than I should, maybe take some trades that were out of my playbook. I have about counting going north and south or selling and shorting. I got um, about six plays in my trading playbook.
Mhm.
I found myself taking plays that weren't in the playbook and just doing a lot of things. So impatience is one of the biggest things. Taking a step back to kind of getting that prop firm money. My money blueprint. I realized that going into that and also after that, there was a certain level in which I was kind of capping off. And once I look back at the stats, I realized like, man, when I hit this number, I'm having the same kind of meltdowns and the same mistakes. So a lot to do with building my money blueprint, my worthiness to say, you know what, I am worth this money. Trading is something that's simple but not easy, and sometimes we have to wrap our mind around just being able to make money, by clicking on a mouse. So that was something, two things that were huge hurdles for me.
Yeah, definitely, and I can totally understand that. There's times where I'm starting to build up to a certain amount of capital, and then all of a sudden something happens, and I get
Yeah,
that number, I get over that number, and I get slapped right back down to a certain level. And I know there's a lot of other
for
traders that have
sure.
the same thing. So, do you use the surgery rules that I've seen on your YouTube video? How do you actually use those in your own day-to-day trading?
Yeah. So as far the surgery rule, um, one thing that I like to do, and I'm trying to refer it because every a lot of the stuff is just embodied in me. But one thing with the surgery rule, if I'm understanding what you're referring to, is just about systematically glowing your attention. Is that what you're referring to? As far
Yeah,
as the
the
yeah,
one of where you wouldn't want a surgeon to look at their Twitter accounts or to watch
right,
television or play games. Those that as far as the videos, that was one that really stand out to me because a lot of traders, they're trying to do a full time job or part time job. They're trying to trade and they're looking at Twitter, they're looking at Snapchat, they're looking at
right,
Discords, and so they're not really focusing their 100% of their attention on the trading.
yeah.
And so like with your having discipline problems with patients, how do you implement some of those type of rules for yourself?
Yeah, and so I found, and I'll answer that twofold to get back to the surgery rule, just to kind of explain it. And like you said, you don't want to do anything in trading that you wouldn't want a surgeon doing,
Yeah,
right? So you wouldn't want them in a Discord while they're working on your heart, or I've had four knee surgeries. I wouldn't want them texting and doing anything like that. So it all comes back to a focused time to be in the charts.
hmm
When it comes to impatience, I kind of backtrack that to a couple things. One, getting away from discipline.
hmm
And discipline is always, going to be the solution for everything. But also, the impatience that I was experiencing, it came back to, and I'm trying to find the best way to explain this, but it came back with unacceptance of the current situation. And so
hmm
when we aren't okay with the way our life is at the moment, when we're projecting that the future moments are going to be better than the now, that's when we're getting impatient to get somewhere away from what currently is. And so I had started counting the dollars, and that's a problem when you start in trade. I'm like, man, this huge account. I'm counting the dollars. I wasn't really spending them. I knew
yeah,
enough not to spend the future money, but I definitely was just really wrapped into the potential after taking that step, which is kind of two steps in a four-part plan I have for this year. So it all came back to not accepting the now. And when you do that, you become impatient, which kind of plays into the surgery rule, is that you want to be hyper focused, and you also want to make sure that you're accepting what is.
yeah, and totally because I noticed in my own trading that the closer I got to that number, that whatever that number was in my head, the more I
Yeah,
started focusing on what the future is gonna be like. If I was to get, let's say, $5,000 in a week or whatever, as I started getting close to that $5,000, I was like, well, the next week I can be up to 7,000 or whatever, and then my trading discipline starts to just slip away, and then all the money that I made is either gone within the next couple of trades. So totally
yeah,
understand that. So when you're trading and you're trying to maintain discipline, for me, discipline is more of an agent of change. It's not something that people do. It's more what people do to change behavior, not something that people who already have that behavior are disciplined. That's just who they are. And
okay,
so when you're trying to be disciplined, is there any sort of techniques that you use, like time management techniques? I know that in some of your videos, you're talking about the Pomodoro technique of where you use some sort
yeah.
of time management. How do you implement that in trading, and how has that actually been able to help you in your trading?
Yeah, so that technique comes back to kind of building up the focus, which kind of plays into the surgery rule. When I first started trading, I would kind of keep track of how long I could stare at the charts before my mind started to wander off.
Hmm.
And I would, when I started off, I had about, a few minutes, moved up to 30, and then I just slowly built on that every day on exactly how long I could focus on the charts. Um, Currently, I don't use the Pomodoro technique, but for discipline, if I ever find myself just waning from my rules or what I call principles, I bring
Hmm.
the checklist out. I have my trading list right here in the desk, and on the see if I can get a visual for you guys. So on the front page here, I have this checklist there,
Yep.
and I literally will bring this out if my discipline's waning, and I will make sure that everything is checked before I enter the trade, all of the pre-check rules. And so that kind of gets me back to discipline, because I found it's just habitual. After
Yeah.
I use that for a while, it's kind of like a punishment for myself. Then I'm like, all right, I can do this. So it's about creating the repetitions for discipline,
Hmm.
and being really clear on what actions need to be taken. And that's the only way you can trust your trading strategy, is to know it works and to know exactly what it takes to make it work. And then
Yeah.
that kind of all plays into me checking off things on that checklist, and eventually I can weigh myself off of it. But if I ever slip, I go right back to it. And then
Hmm.
again, embodying that change, and like you said, change is something, or building change is kind of, what's the best way to put this? It's the habits are for changing,
Yeah.
like you said. And so using this helps me change, but also having a vision of the ultimate trader that I want to be helps me
Yeah.
embody some of those skills a little bit better. So anytime that my discipline is just slipping off, I'm like, all right, what's the version of me that doesn't have these problems? And then I
Yeah.
instantly, from a I guess a spiritual and a mental standpoint, try to merge with that person, and view my trading and the world from that perspective, and say, you know what, if I was the $1 million+ trader that I am right now, would I be making this mistake? And the answer is always no. So I
Yeah.
try to see it from that perspective, and stay in that frame when I'm trading, and looking at changes for trading.
So in a way, the change in the habits is almost an identity change, because
Yeah, definitely.
a person who is having disciplinary problems in their trading, if they're using discipline, eventually they're going to be changing the entire perspective and identity of themselves. So
Right.
and so
Yeah,
when
very well
you're
said.
using the checklist, I notice it's a full page. Does every one of those have to be ticked, or is it the top section is for just one trade and the next section is for one trade, or how does that actually work?
Yeah, so it is a full page, and that's only just so I don't have to keep erasing during the day. I
Okay.
have seven, and it's just repeated over and over. So it's one, two, three, four.
Okay.
It's like 5 by 4 rows, and each with the one, two, three, four, five, six rules that I check off there.
Yeah.
So yeah, just the whole page just keeps me going from the next trade to the next trade.
Yeah. And I'm going to be doing the same thing. I watched one of your videos and you mentioned the same thing. So when you were trading, did you have to define what you consider an edge in the market? And how did you do that? Was it something from the firm that you're trading with, or did you come up with your own trading strategy and patterns or rules beforehand? And you're just trying to, how did you define that type of a step
Yeah,
before you get into there?
so that's a great question. And so strategies are a dime a dozen. We can
Yeah.
get those off YouTube and anywhere. So I got my strategy from a course.
Hmm.
After that, and I'm just a disclosure, I'm what you might call a two-legged pullback in my scalping. So a
Okay.
lot of two-legged moves, a lot of first entries, short, as well as going north on the charts as well. So a few people, Al Brooks, Mac, a lot of people, Michael Chin, Riley, Coleman are doing that. So I have a lot of individuals I can watch. However, what I found is once I had the strategy, it needed some other things. And the next thing it needed was it needed me to execute it.
Yeah.
So the way I see edge, to answer your question, is we, as the operators of our trade, we are our edge. If I can't operate a system that I know works for somebody else, then obviously I'm the problem. I
Yeah.
had Jared Tindler, a trading psychologist, on the show, and he said until you can fully confidently execute your strategy, you shouldn't even think of any problem as being a psychological problem. It should all be execution. So
Yeah.
once I did have a strategy, I focused on, I can't obviously take this pattern and enter the market every single time I see it. So
Yeah.
from the process of elimination, I need to figure out what market context, what situations, what EMA position is going to give me the best edge in the market based on what I can see. So I
Hmm.
trade. I think it's trading is, in my opinion, it's just as much as an art as it is a science.
Yeah.
And so we all see the market in different ways. And as I was coming up with traders, those who were mentoring me, others that I've mentored, we all saw something before the other person. And so
Yeah.
I leaned into what I naturally could see in the market based on that strategy. And I started to hone that over time. And then once I was able to take the strategy, hone it into what I could see as far as the context of price action, then I was able to add risk management to it. And that's what I consider a full, trading plan. Is you have a strategy,
Yeah.
you have the experience with the execution and context of the market, and then you have your risk management. And that's kind of how I built the foundation of what I currently do.
So with your checklist, is that a mixture between psychological checklist and what you're seeing in the chart checklist? For instance, like I'm normally trade small caps. I'm turning my small cap strategy into options, so I have to come up with what I consider or define as a good options trade. So when
Okay.
you're doing those type of things, like if you're looking at a chart and I'm looking at a chart based off of our past experiences, our expectations of the market, our expectations of that day, we're going to perceive the information to be completely different. And
Right.
so, even if you're learning from somebody else, the way that you interpret that information is going to be different than the way that they interpret that information. Especially if you're alone on your, if you're, trading from home, you could, have an argument with your wife or somebody else, and the next day you're going to have a completely different perspective of what the market is. So when you're
Totally.
creating your checklist, going back to the definition, did you have to? How did you come up with a definition of what you should be putting down for your ideal type of a trade? Was it
Yeah.
based
So
off of both mental and chart pattern, or was it just predominantly just chart pattern recognition?
predominantly chart patterns. Like you
Hmm.
said, we can be on that emotional roller coaster. And everything that I do as far as making changes, adjustments, it's all from data. Now, of
Yeah,
course, we have to start somewhere. And that's like, when you get a mentor, which I highly suggest for anyone trading,
yeah,
they'll say, hey, this is what you need to do. But like you said, we all see things differently. So you might see something that they don't see, even though they may be, more advanced in what they're doing.
yeah,
So there's a process of honing it to you. And I believe that that honing process is based on data. I
yeah,
have thousands of trade pictures, thousands of trade pictures in the actual market. And
yeah,
then I have, a few other thousand for sim trades as well. I take pictures of every trade I enter. I work to get past the point of playing around where you just want to see what happens in the market. You're like, oh,
yeah.
I'm just going to click to see what
Just
happens. So
gambling.
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. And even in sim, it's a bad habit because we know, practice makes permanent. So once you're past that point of seeing what happens, you can start to look at the data and you can start to see your pictures and say, okay, these are the reasons based on my understanding this doesn't work. If you don't know what doesn't work, then you need to go to a mentor or someone else who does the strategy.
yeah,
But from tons of pictures, from tons of data, I've tried all kinds of things. I've tried, you know, outside of astrology or anything like that. I have looked at the point in the charts where I'm failing, the direction. I've did everything I can to cut the fat on all my trades and just leave myself with exactly what I know works and what can work. And of course, it's not going to be 100% of the time, but what I
no,
can see is going to work a majority of the time, and that's all based on data. So no emotions, in doing that.
yeah,
Although I do chart emotions, in a journal, to make sure that I'm optimal going into
yeah,
trade. So putting myself in a peak position and a peak condition to trade. It's kind of another kind of strategy that runs along with the technical.
hmm,
Because, like I said, we're the operator, and we have to be at peak condition.
yeah, definitely. Yeah, because I'm more of a self-taught trader. I've been trading since 2017. I signed up for
Awesome.
two online educators for about 2 months each, quit them, and I've been just on my own journey ever since then. So everything I know is just me having to reach out to different people, reading different books, come up with my own conclusions of the market. And tracking data and tracking information is definitely the way to go. I consider myself more of pattern day trader that trades specific patterns on the day, using data to actually enter into the market for my target sell price or even my stop
Okay.
loss. So every time I go into it, it's completely systematic. The only discretionary part of my
Awesome.
trading is whether or not that pattern is actually what I should be trading or not. That's the only discretion in my trading.
Yeah,
And
that's a
so
great place to be.
yeah, and I have the same thing. I have thousands of different charts, and screenshots of charts and entries and exits. Thousands of you know. And the way that I do is I don't just track the patterns that I trade. I track even ones that meet my criteria in the market, which gives me my sell targets. because base my sale targets off of the averages of that move, knowing
Okay.
that, if that pattern forms, there may be a 74% chance that it's going to reach X price, and then an
Gotcha.
80% chance of reaching that price. So the way that I trade is, if there's any pattern in the market that meets my criteria, I trade every single one of them. If there's 5 that day,
Okay.
I'll take all 5, because I know there's a statistical chance that 2 of them may fail or 1 of them may fail, but the other ones will work out. So
Yeah. And with the right risk management, I think that's awesome. For my strategy, I have to be very particular.
yeah,
I'm only profitable at, I think with the runners I've been having, it has to be about 78.4% for
yeah,
me even to be profitable. So I have to be a little bit picky. But one thing to say about what you're doing is, I think that we can have a lot more confidence in just doing it when
oh
we
yeah,
have a strong system like you have, and just say, you know what, I'm taking them all, and we're gonna, manage them from within. So I love that. That's
yeah.
awesome.
Now, when you're scalping, because you're in and out of the markets pretty quickly, most of the time I could be in a
Yeah.
trade for a minimum of an hour, sometimes all day long.
Okay.
So when you're scalping, because you have to be on the top of your game, you have to be, you're sharp as a tack. How
Right.
does your mental state of mind actually affect you during those times? Mostly because with myself, if I'm in a trade for a long period of time, the longer I'm in that trade, the more bored I become. So, have you ever experienced some similarities between your either in a trade for a long or even a short period of time, and then maybe it's another time frame before you get into another trade, that your mental state starts to dwindle down to the point of where you're not mentally focused enough to maintain that trade?
Yeah, for sure. And so that started, when I first was trading. So I worked on just building up the time that I could be on the charts every single
Hmm.
day, just adding small amounts of time. Um, I really honed in a sleeping routine, a breakfast routine, an exercise routine. Everything about my life is geared towards, staying on the charts for a long
Yeah.
period of time. When I scalp, there, like you said, there are huge lows in between trades. I think our personality plays a lot into, what type of trading we should be doing.
Yes, I
So
agree.
I think scalping kind of fits with my style. I like to see something execute, and then, generally, if I'm in the trade over 2 minutes, it's usually, you know something is bad, right? Either the
Yeah.
market's just really slow that day, which we've seen over the last few years, just, or during the holiday season. But generally, I'm out pretty quick, and I think that fits my personality.
Yeah.
In between those trades, depending on what price action's looking like, I may get up, I may walk away, I may use that time to actually grow in another area of trading. So I have the Polity, the Mark Douglas books,
Mhm.
but initially, that's a little bit after I got, to a certain level. Initially, I focused on, okay, although I'm not going to get a trade, I'm just going to watch this price action. I'm going to hammer this in. So, you kind of have levels. I think everything, applies to a certain level in your trading.
Yeah.
There are a lot of things that I do, a lot of habits I have that I don't do or I didn't do. I do now that I didn't do, and vice versa. And then there are a
Mhm.
lot of traders ahead of me on the path. They're like, oh, yeah, I did that, but I no longer need to.
Yeah. Yeah, like I remember when I first started trading, one of the biggest things that I had a problem with was, as soon as market opened, I just want to jump into a trade.
Yeah,
And
yeah, for
now
sure.
I can wait for a longer period of time before my pattern forms, and sometimes I won't even take a trade. Like today, I didn't trade at all. There was nothing in the markets that I saw until after the
That's
market closed.
awesome.
I was like, oh, I could have taken that one, but it's okay to not trade every day, and
For
it's
sure.
okay to
Yeah.
just wait. And so I know that you know being able to not take a trade is kind of like a muscle. You have to kind of, like you said, kind of develop that to do,
Right.
to sustain yourself longer without having that urge to just jump in. With how long you've been trading, do you still have some urges to do something that violates your system and your rules and your trading style?
So, I did when I was in the funding process, and
Hmm.
I actually, I'm curing it. I'm trying to get my second funded account right now. Um, and so when you have a certain amount of days to hit a certain profit, it can
Hmm.
cause those feelings. So I've definitely experienced that, where I'm like, you know what, I need a trade, and you start to get a little bit anxious,
Yeah.
with getting in the market. One thing that helps me in that area is, I always, and this is something that, I had a guest on, and I can't remember his name at the time, but a Japanese trader. And he said, a lot of times as traders, we're looking at the big bucks, but we're not looking at what it takes to replace an income.
Yeah.
right? And so although I've made great money in corporate America, it doesn't take a lot of trading, to match
Yeah.
that. So I always keep my mind on, all right, don't always look for that large goal, just kind of work with what you have. And it makes you patient, because I like to look at the numbers on a weekly, monthly basis. And I'm
Mhm.
always like, you know what? If I miss this trade, I can make it up tomorrow. There's no need to rush and make a mistake, because mistakes are going to be catastrophic. So just holding on to, I have a goal target and not getting
Mhm.
into that mindset that I need to make $1 million today and things like that. So that's been real helpful for me, with staying patient. It's just understanding the market's going to be there tomorrow, and that if I lose and get burnt, I'm going to put myself in a deeper hole.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, and one of the things that I started doing was completely removing off my P&L. I have no idea how much I'm up or down on the trade.
Oh
I don't
yeah,
even know what
that's
the
awesome.
percentage is anymore. It's either gonna hit my profit targets or get me stopped out. Either way, it's just the way the market's gonna work. And
Yeah.
I've stopped tracking all my P&L even on an Excel spreadsheet. At the end of the month, I'll go through and I'll put in the code so that way I'll calculate how much I'm profit or loss on the month. And it's surprising at the end of the month of when you don't know what you're doing, how much you're up or down, of how you just completely forget about what your
Yeah.
P&L is, how much money you made. And I started doing that starting last month, and I ended last month green. I was surprised. I was like, wow, I ended green.
Awesome.
And I was like, well, that's great. So, and I'm doing
Yeah.
it again this month. Probably just keep doing it. I did find it a lot easier to not have that stresses of like, the stock's going up in your favor and you want to hold on longer, or the stock's going against you and you want to pull your stop or not execute your mental stop because you don't want to actually lose that much money. So,
Yeah. And so two things I want to say to that. One is that, getting on that roller coaster of the stocks up, the stocks down, it's definitely something that you either have to avoid totally or kind of go through. I did a little bit of both. I don't like to look at the P&L at the same time. Early in trading, I kind of just did some breathing exercises. I have the ebook, that really focuses on dealing with emotions while
mhm,
we're trading. So you have to kind of detach emotionally from that. But at the same time, what you're doing and what's beautiful about that is you're focusing on what you can control. When you're looking at the market go up and down, we have no control over that, right? We can get in the market, we can manage the trade, and then we can exit. Those are the
yeah,
three things where we actually have control. So getting off that roller coaster, like you said, and not focusing on the P&L is the best thing to do, because when you take your eyes off of what you can do, how you're entering, how you're exiting, how you're managing, then you start to think you can control things you can't, and that's when mistakes happen. So I think you're going to continue to see growth as long as focus on exactly your execution versus
yeah,
that P&L. That, yeah, everyone, it's difficult to do because it's a money game.
yeah.
So I understand that, but yeah, that's definitely awesome.
Yeah, it's definitely it's interesting of how your mentality kind of switches when you stop focusing on the money.
Yeah.
When I was focusing on the money, even just a couple of months ago, I'd always get to those numbers of where it's like, oh my gosh, this is going up, and I aim for pretty high profit targets. My average trade is around between 70 to 90% on a day.
Oh
So,
wow. Okay.
I'm looking for these pretty big profit gains. Even on small caps, I'm looking for 20 to 30%. And when it's starting to approach those levels, I start thinking, well, maybe it's going to go further. Maybe this is what's going to happen. And when I
Right.
just, and that's just based off of me looking at my P&L and going, hey, I'm up, $500, $1,000, whatever the case is. Maybe I can get more from the market. And it completely violates all my trading rules because I know the averages of that pattern is going to say it's only going to reach 20% or it's only going to reach 150%, depends on if I'm trading options or not. So,
Yeah. Yeah, and having a plan is key to doing that, because you can take the when we make emotional decisions in the market, it's usually going to be from that reptilian brain, that fight or flight. And like Mark Douglas talks about, our vision, and Paula T as well, our vision collapses,
yeah,
and it focuses on things, and it's usually the thing that we don't want to focus on. That's the
yeah,
fight or flight. So when we have those rules, and also contingency rules, like, okay, it hit my target but it didn't fill, now it's coming back down, or it's just lingering right there. So having rules for things that may occur over
yeah,
time, we can build those up as well. And allowing us to take action, or at least see something that says, you know what, I'm at least going to read right now as far as action. Okay, it says do nothing. And so
yeah,
that's a lot better than sitting in that place of, should I do something? Shouldn't I do something? So building up contingency plans over time is a great way to,
yeah.
to work with that as well. But like you said, no focusing on the P&L is the best way.
Yeah, and like with my style of trading, the moment I enter the trade, I'm completely not in control of the trade. So
Right.
as soon
That
as I
no one
enter
is.
in, I use a bracket order. So I already have my risk level set and I already have my sell targets, and I scale out of the trade. It's something I learned from Mark Douglas, because you always have to have a systematic way of scaling out the trade. So based off the
Right.
data, I go for the highest probability of, like, if it's an 80%, let's say, to reach 50% of a move, I'll scale out from 50, 60, and 70. So that way I'm maxing out at 70% of the move. And so when I do that, it also helps me completely take away control. I can stop looking at the charts and kind of focus on other things, and maybe take care of my kid or something like that. And then at the end of the day, I can just look at it and go, oh, I either made money or I lost money. When you're scalping, do you actually scale out of the trade, or I don't know if you would be able to, because it's such a quick move?
Yeah, so it's a very quick move, and the only thing similar to that is what we would call a runner.
Hmm.
And so if I get into the market, and let's just say example, I go in with 10 contracts or 10 quantity, I may have 8 for my first target and then
Yeah.
2 kind of resting. After that, different strategies to kind of trail that runner.
Hmm.
I can trail that bar by bar, say, okay, this bar is closed. I'm going to go here. I'm going to go there. Or you know what? If the market is moving with a lot of volatility, I might say, you know what, I'm going to get as much as this profit as I can while it's going up. So I have about, besides those two, one other way that I kind of focus on runners.
Hmm.
Um, but generally, everything is scalped at my first target. And I don't have to worry about it. So not a lot of trade management, unless it's, beginning of the month, end of the month is usually when I am bringing the runners out and splitting things up from just that
Yeah.
that first target goal. Sometimes you just, you have to adjust. Sometimes I'm like, man, the bars are huge today. There's a great chance that I might be able to get a few extra points with my runners. So I'm going to try a few. Or if it's a day where my scalps are looking more like swing trades, I'll throw my runners on as well. But
Yeah.
I like to take all that money, off the table, um, just for my trading style and kind of how I see it, similar to football and my athletic career, which is one of the reasons I really, have a passion for trading. Is it's just like for me seeing a route. I was a defensive back, so if a guy runs up to me, he runs an out route, I react to the out route. And I react with the right technique. So that's kind of how I see the market. It's
Yeah.
going somewhere, I see it, I react quick, plays over, I'm back to the huddle, and ready to do it again.
Yeah. Hello, and welcome to Trading Without Fear.